I was murdered on my wedding day. The truth is as simple as it is horrifying. I, Sophia, was stabbed to death by the man who had just become my husband, Julian. As my blood pooled on the pristine white dress I'd chosen with such care, my final thoughts were of our unborn child and the cruel betrayal that ended both our lives. Then I woke up. 2 months before Julian would ever propose. 2 months before I would accept the exquisite ring that would bind me to my killer. My 18-year-old self stared back at me in the mirror, alive and whole, with every memory of my future death vivid in my mind. This rebirth is my one chance to rewrite my ending. Julian doesn't know that I can see through his charming facade to the monster beneath. He doesn't realize that every sweet word, every calculated touch that once won my heart now fills me with disgust. When he approaches me with that familiar smile, I don't see my dream man anymore. I see my murderer. I refuse to be his victim again. I'll rebuild my relationship with my mother, excel in school, and gather evidence of Julian's true nature. But he's dangerous, connected to my family's business, and more determined than I anticipated. Rejecting him has only intensified his pursuit, and I'm discovering that his manipulation began long before we even met. My second chance comes with one certainty. I will watch Julian suffer for his betrayal. This time, I'll be the one who gets the last laugh. Before we start the video, buckle up. Get ready and subscribe for a special surprise tomorrow. I gasp awake, my heart pounding so violently it might break through my chest. The phantom pain of the knife still burns through my abdomen. My hands instinctively clutch my stomach, expecting to find blood, the wedding dress, the life draining away. But there's nothing. I'm in my bed, in my childhood room, wearing pajamas. For several terrifying seconds, I can't breathe. The memory is too fresh, too real. Julian's face transforming from adoration to cold calculation as he plunged the knife into me. The way he whispered, "I'm sorry it had to be this way, Sophia," while watching the light fade from my eyes. My final thoughts of our unborn child, the tiny life inside me that would never have a chance. I stumble to the bathroom, nearly falling as my legs tremble beneath me. The face in the mirror stops me cold. It's me, but younger. The fine lines around my eyes are gone. My hair is shorter, styled the way I wore it in high school. I grip the sink, feeling the cool porcelain under my fingers, grounding myself in this impossible reality. This is 2 months before Julian proposes, 2 months before the beginning of the end. The digital clock on my nightstand reads 6:15 a.m. Monday, March 17th. The date clicks in my mind immediately. In my previous life, this was the week I first noticed Julian watching me at the charity function my father insisted I attend. The week he accidentally bumped into me, spilling his drink on my dress so he could apologize profusely and insist on replacing it. The beginning of his calculated pursuit. I sink to the bathroom floor, wrapping my arms around myself. I've been given a second chance. I don't know how or why, but I'm alive again. And this time, I know exactly what Julian is capable of. A knock at my bedroom door startles me. "Sophia, are you up for school?" My mother's voice is tentative, uncertain, just as I remember. Our relationship had been strained during these years. I was the substitute daughter, the illegitimate child my father, Alexander Sophia, had placed in the spotlight to protect his real daughter from his enemies. My mother had been little more than a convenient caretaker in his eyes. In my previous life, I'd been too consumed with Julian to notice how she tried to connect with me, how she suffered under my father's coldness too. By the time I realized her worth, it was too late. "Yes, I'm awake," I call back, surprised by how young my voice sounds. "Breakfast in 20 minutes, she says before her footsteps retreat down the hall. I stand shakily, splashing cold water on my face. My uniform hangs in the closet, the prestigious private academy's blazer and skirt I'd once been so proud to wear. Before Julian, I'd been a decent student, But after meeting him, my grades had slipped as I invested everything in our relationship. What a fool I'd been. My phone buzzes with a message. My heart stops when I see it's from Lena, my best friend from high school who I'd gradually lost touch with after Julian convinced me she was jealous of our relationship. She died in a car accident 2 years after my wedding in my previous life. Now she's alive, texting me about a calculus test. The reality of this second chance hits me fully. It's not just about avoiding Julian and my murder. It's about all the other mistakes I made, all the people I neglected, all the opportunities I squandered. I have a chance to rebuild everything. I dress mechanically, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. As I brush my hair, I make my first resolution. I will not fall for Julian's tricks again. When he approaches me at the charity function this weekend, I'll be ready. I'll be cold, dismissive, uninterested. I'll be everything I wasn't before. The second resolution follows naturally. I'll excel in school this time, get the scholarship to the university I abandoned for Julian, build a future that's truly mine. And third, I'll reconnect with my mother, see her as the ally she could have been. Looking at my young face in the mirror, I make one final promise to myself. This time, Julian won't just fail to steal my life. He'll pay for what he did to me in that other reality. This time, I'll be the one who gets the last laugh. I grab my bag and head downstairs, knowing that the next 2 months will determine everything. Julian doesn't know it yet, but his perfect victim has become his worst nightmare. The charity gala arrives faster than I anticipated. 5 days after my rebirth, I find myself in the grand ballroom of the Excelsior Hotel, wearing the same blue silk dress I wore the first time. My father insisted on it, claiming it highlights the Sophia family image. He doesn't care that it's too revealing for an 18-year-old. I'm just a prop to him. I scan the room nervously, knowing exactly when and where Julian will appear. My hands shake slightly as I sip mineral water, and I force myself to take deep breaths. He isn't my husband here. He isn't my murderer yet. He's just a predator who hasn't found his prey. "You look tense," my mother whispers, appearing beside me. In my previous life, I'd barely spoken to her at this event, too busy preparing myself to look appealing to the wealthy bachelors my father wanted me to impress. "Just tired from exams," I lie, offering her a genuine smile. Her eyes widen slightly at my warmth, and I feel a pang of regret for how I treated her before. "You've been studying very hard lately," she notes, sounding both surprised and pleased. "Your father mentioned your calculus teacher called to compliment your improvement." Before I can respond, I feel it, a gaze burning into my back. I don't need to turn around to know it's him. Julian Chen, 32 years old, investment genius, philanthropist, murderer. I steel myself before turning, and even with preparation, the sight of him hits me like a physical blow. He looks exactly as I remember from our first meeting, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his dark hair styled perfectly, his smile calculated to seem both confident and slightly vulnerable. In my previous life, that smile made my heart race with excitement. Now it makes my heart race with fear. He moves toward me with practiced grace, holding a champagne flute. I know exactly what comes next. He'll pretend to stumble, spill his drink on my dress, and use the opportunity to start a conversation. 3, 2, 1. Julian steps forward, feigning a slight trip. I step smoothly to the side, causing him to stumble past me, spilling champagne on an elderly businessman instead. "I am so sorry," Julian apologizes, looking genuinely flustered for once. The businessman waves him off good-naturedly, but Julian's eyes find mine. Confusion flickers across his face, followed by something that makes my blood run cold. Interest. My mother touches my elbow. "Sophia, your father wants to introduce you to some business associates." I allow her to lead me away, feeling Julian's eyes following me. The script has changed. In my previous life, I'd been flustered and flattered by his attention after the accident. Now I've shown him I'm not an easy target. The next day at school, I'm still shaken from the encounter. Lena notices my distraction during lunch. Earth to Sophia? You've been weird all morning. I focus on her living, breathing face and smile. Sorry, just thinking about university applications. Since when do you care about university? Last week you said you'd probably just work for your dad after graduation. That's right. Before Julian, my ambitions had been limited by my father's expectations. After Julian, they'd been limited by his. I've decided I want more options, I tell her firmly. I'm applying for the National Scholarship. Lena stares at me like I've grown a second head, but before she can respond, a commotion at the cafeteria entrance draws our attention. Julian stands in the doorway looking completely out of place among teenagers. Several female students are already whispering and pointing. A bouquet of white roses hangs from his hand. Is that Julian Chen, the investment guy? Lena whispers. What's he doing at our school? My stomach twists. In my previous life, the flowers came later, after several accidental meetings and one coffee date. He's accelerating his approach, and it terrifies me. Julian's eyes find mine across the room, and he walks directly toward our table. Students fall silent, watching the spectacle unfold. He stops before me, extending the roses. Sophia, Sophia, he says, using my ridiculous double name that comes from being the daughter of Alexander Sophia. I wanted to apologize for nearly ruining your evening yesterday. Would you allow me to make it up to you with dinner? His voice is exactly as I remember, smooth, cultured, with a hint of humility that I now know is entirely fabricated. The student cafeteria erupts in whispers. I stare at the roses, remembering how they adorned my bridal bouquet, my grave, white roses, Julian's signature. I don't accept flowers from strangers, I say coldly, standing up, and I don't date men nearly twice my age. Please leave before I contact security. His face remains pleasant, but I see it in his eyes. The flash of anger, the challenge accepted. The prey that refuses to be caught has only become more enticing. As I walk away, leaving him standing there with his rejected flowers, I realize my hands are trembling. Julian Chen has never been rejected before. I've changed the script, but I've also done something potentially dangerous. I've made him want me more. The gossip about Julian's visit and my rejection spreads through school like wildfire. By the next morning, I'm no longer just Sophia, the substitute heiress. I'm the girl who publicly rejected Julian Chen. You're insane, Lena tells me as we walk to calculus. He's literally one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. My mom has his investment strategy book on her nightstand. I focus on organizing my study materials. I'm not interested in dating anyone right now. I need to focus on the National Scholarship. This becomes my mantra over the next 2 weeks. Every morning I wake at 5 to study before school. Every evening I review material until my eyes burn. When my father mentions Julian at dinner, commenting on his recent acquisition of a competing technology firm, I keep my expression neutral, showing neither interest nor distaste. He asked about you, my father says casually, watching my reaction. That's unfortunate, I reply, turning a page in my textbook. I have no interest in him. My father's fork pauses midway to his mouth. He's a valuable business connection, Sophia. His interest in you could benefit the company. I'm 18, Father. His interest in me should concern you, not flatter you. My mother's eyes widen at my boldness. In my previous life, I never spoke to my father this way. His approval had been everything to me. You've changed, he says, narrowing his eyes. If only he knew how much. The midterm exam results post the following week. My name sits at the top of every subject list. My teachers are shocked. My classmates are confused. Lena is suspicious. Did you get a brain transplant or something? She asks as we exit the school gates. You never cared about grades before. I always cared, I correct her. I just didn't think I could do better than I was doing. It's partly true. Before Julian, I'd been an average student, too accustomed to my father's low expectations of his substitute daughter. After Julian, all my energy went to being the perfect girlfriend, then fiancé, then wife. I never discovered what I could achieve academically. Well, whatever alien replaced you, I like her, Lena says, linking her arm through mine. But you're still coming to my birthday party this weekend, right? All study and no play makes Sophia a dull girl. I freeze. Lena's birthday party. In my previous life, I'd skipped it for my first official date with Julian. He'd taken me to an exclusive restaurant, treating me like a princess, making me feel special for the first time in my life. I wouldn't miss it, I promise her. That evening, I find my mother in the garden, tending to her orchids. Another detail I'd forgotten. Before Julian consumed my every thought, my mother and I occasionally shared quiet moments among her flowers. Need help? I offer, kneeling beside her. She looks surprised but hands me a small trowel. These need to be repotted. Do you remember how I showed you? I don't. Not really, but I follow her instructions carefully. We work in companionable silence until she speaks. Your father received an invitation today from Julian Chen. He's hosting a business gala next Friday and specifically requested you attend. My hand's still in the soil. I'm not going. Your father insists, she says gently. He says the Sophia Group needs Chen Investments partnership for the overseas expansion. I close my eyes briefly. In my previous life, this gala was where Julian first kissed me, in the moonlit garden of his estate, where I began to fall hopelessly in love with my future killer. I have an exam the next day, I argue weakly, already knowing it's futile. He seemed very intent on your attendance. My mother hesitates. Sophia, is there something about this man that frightens you? You can tell me. For a moment, I consider telling her everything. But how could I explain that in another timeline Julian murdered me on our wedding day? That I've somehow been given a second chance to avoid that fate? I just don't like how he looks at me, I say instead, like I'm something to be acquired. My mother nods slowly. I notice that too. Stay close to me at the gala. If he makes you uncomfortable, we'll leave. Her protectiveness brings unexpected tears to my eyes. In my previous life, I'd pushed her away when she expressed concerns about Julian's intensity. I'd accused her of jealousy, of trying to ruin my happiness. Thank you, I whisper, squeezing her hand. 3 days later, a sleek black car idles outside our school gates. Julian leans against it, ignoring the stares of passing students. His eyes find mine immediately, and he pushes off the car, moving toward me with determined strides. Sophia, he calls, just 5 minutes of your time. Please. The please sounds foreign on his lips. Julian never begged in my previous life. He never had to. I stop, allowing him to approach. Running would only prolong the inevitable. Better to face the predator and show no fear. What do you want? I ask when he reaches me. His smile is practiced perfection. Just a conversation. You're a very difficult woman to get to know. Woman? I repeat. I'm a high school student. You should be having conversations with people your own age. A flash of irritation crosses his face before his mask slips back into place. Age is just a number. Your intelligence and maturity far exceed most people decades older. The same lines, the same manipulation, different only in its timing. My answer is still no, I say firmly. Now please leave before I call security. As I turn to walk away, he grabs my wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but with enough pressure to stop me. In that touch, I feel the ghost of the hand that once drove a knife into my body. You can't avoid me forever, Sophia, he says softly. Your father and I have business together. We're going to be seeing a lot of each other. I pull my wrist free, heart pounding. Touch me again and I'll file a police report. His expression hardens for just a moment before he steps back, hands raised in mock surrender. I apologize. I just wanted to give you this. He extends a small velvet box. Not a ring, not yet. In my previous life, the first gift was a bracelet. I don't take it. I'm not interested in gifts from men I barely know. It's not from a man you barely know, he counters. It's from your father's business partner, a token of professional courtesy. His persistence is worse than I remembered. He's adapting to my resistance, finding new angles of approach. And he's right about one thing. With his connection to my father's business, I can't avoid him completely. I need a new strategy. Lena's birthday party is at her parents' beachfront property, a modest but charming house compared to the Sophia estate. Music pulses from speakers, and teenagers cluster in groups across the sand. In my previous life, I never saw this party. Never strengthened my friendship with Lena. Never experienced this normal teenage moment. "You actually came," Lena says, hugging me tightly. "I half expected you'd bail to study." I hug her back, savoring her solid, living presence. I promised, didn't I? The evening unfolds in a blur of laughter, cake, and silly party games. I dance with classmates I barely spoke to in my previous life, join conversations I'd never been part of before. For a few precious hours, I'm just a normal teenager, not a murder victim reborn. My phone buzzes just as we're setting up a bonfire, unknown number. "I see you didn't attend with your father tonight. The business gala misses your presence. Perhaps you'd prefer a more private setting." Julian? My stomach churns. How did he get my number? Another text arrives. "Your blue dress from the charity event suited you. Though I imagine you'd look even lovelier in red." Red. Like the blood that soaked my wedding dress. I block the number with shaking fingers, then turn off my phone completely. He won't ruin this night. Later, as Lena and I sit watching the waves, she turns to me with unusual seriousness. "What's going on with you, Soph?" And don't say nothing, because something's definitely up. I consider deflecting, but Lena deserves better. "Do you ever feel like someone is dangerous, but no one else sees it?" Her eyebrows rise. "Is this about that Chen guy? The one who came to school?" "He won't leave me alone," I admit, "and my father keeps pushing me toward him because of business connections." Lena's expression hardens. "That's messed up. Have you told your mom?" She knows something's wrong, but I can't tell her everything. I dig my fingers into the cool sand. I need to start documenting his behavior in case it gets worse. "Like stalker evidence?" Lena pulls out her phone. "Let's start now. Record everything he's done so far." We spend the next hour creating a detailed document of Julian's pursuit. The school visit, the rejected gifts, the car outside school, the text messages from blocked numbers. Seeing it all listed makes the pattern clear, even to someone who doesn't have my knowledge of his true nature. "This guy is a total creep," Lena declares. "If he keeps this up, we're going straight to my dad. He's a lawyer, remember." Her protective fierceness brings tears to my eyes. In my previous life, Julian had systematically isolated me from Lena and everyone else who might have protected me. "Thank you," I whisper. Monday brings university acceptance letters. In my previous timeline, I'd only applied to local universities to stay close to Julian. This time, I've applied to international programs, scholarships, opportunities that would take me far from him. I'm accepted to all of them. "The Seoul National University Scholarship?" My mother gasps, reading over my shoulder. "Sophia, that's incredible." Pride swells in my chest. This is who I could have been without Julian's influence. This is the future he stole from me. My father is less impressed at dinner. "International study is unnecessary. The Sophia Group needs you here." "For what purpose?" I challenge. "You've never shown interest in my actual involvement with the company before." His jaw tightens. "Julian Chen has expressed interest in mentoring you in business strategy. It would be a valuable opportunity." So that's his angle now, professional mentorship. "I'm pursuing computer science, not business," I counter, a career path I'd abandoned for Julian in my previous life. and I've already accepted the sole scholarship." "You'll do no such thing," my father snaps. "I forbid it." My mother's hand covers mine. "Alexander, she's earned this opportunity. You should be proud." "Stay out of this," he growls. "The girl has obligations to the family name." "The girl," I repeat, ice in my voice. "Is that all I am to you? A placeholder for your real daughter?" Shock flashes across his face. This secret was never openly discussed in our household. "Who told you that?" he demands. I realize my mistake too late. In this timeline, I shouldn't know about my status as the illegitimate substitute daughter. That revelation came later, from Julian, after we were engaged. "I've always known," I lie smoothly. "It wasn't hard to figure out when you've never treated me like a real daughter." My father's face pales. My mother looks stricken. "We'll discuss this tomorrow," he says stiffly, rising from the table. "And you will attend the Chen Gala on Friday. That's not a request." After he leaves, my mother stays, tears in her eyes. "Sophia, I wanted to tell you so many times." "It's not your fault," I assure her, squeezing her hand. "But I need you to understand something. Julian Chen is dangerous. Father doesn't see it because he only sees the business opportunity." "What has he done?" she asks, suddenly alert. I show her the documentation Lena and I created. With each entry, her expression grows more concerned. "This is stalking behavior," she says finally. "I won't let you go to that gala alone." "Thank you," I whisper, feeling for the first time that I might have a real ally in this timeline. What I don't tell her is that my acceptance to Seoul means nothing if I can't survive the next few weeks. Julian is escalating faster than he did in my previous life, adapting to my resistance with new strategies. And I've just discovered he already has connections to the Seoul University Board of Directors. There may be no escaping him after all. The Chen Gala is even more extravagant than I remember. Crystal chandeliers illuminate the ballroom of Julian's mansion, and champagne flows freely among the business elite. I stay firmly at my mother's side, wearing a modest black dress instead of the revealing red one Julian sent to our house yesterday with a card reading, "A suggestion for tomorrow evening." I'd burned the dress in our garden fire pit. "Alexander said Julian has been inquiring about your academic achievements," my mother murmurs as we accept flutes of sparkling water from a passing waiter. "He seems quite impressed by your computer science focus." A chill runs down my spine. Julian never showed interest in my academic pursuits in my previous life. He'd encouraged me to drop out of university altogether after our engagement, claiming that, as his wife, I wouldn't need a career. "Your daughter is even more brilliant than I'd been told," Julian's voice cuts through the crowd as he approaches us. "Highest marks in the district and accepted to Seoul National with a full scholarship. Impressive." He looks exactly as I remember him at this gala. Perfectly tailored tuxedo, hair styled with precision, that practiced smile that once made my heart race with infatuation. Now it makes my skin crawl. "Mr. Chen," my mother says coolly, "thank you for the invitation. Your home is lovely." "Please call me Julian." His eyes never leave my face. "Sophia, I'd love to show you the art collection in the East Wing. There's a particularly stunning Li Ufan piece I think you'd appreciate." In my previous life, I'd eagerly accepted this invitation. It led to the garden, to our first kiss, to the beginning of my end. "I'm afraid we're not staying long," my mother interjects before I can respond. "Sophia has an exam tomorrow." Julian's smile doesn't falter, but something hardens in his eyes. "Perhaps just a brief tour then. I promise to have her back to you in 10 minutes. My mother hesitates, looking to me for guidance. I know she can't refuse outright without causing a scene. Julian has orchestrated this perfectly. 10 minutes, I agree, reluctantly, and my mother comes with us. "The collection is in a rather narrow gallery," Julian counters smoothly. "It gets quite crowded with more than 2 people. But I understand your concern, Mrs. Sophia. I'll have her back before you finish your drink." My mother squeezes my hand in silent question. I give her a reassuring nod. Better to deal with this now in a house full of witnesses than have him escalate further. 10 minutes, she repeats firmly to Julian. Not a second more. Julian offers his arm, which I pointedly ignore as I follow him toward the east wing. We pass through gilded doorways and down a long corridor lined with priceless artwork. "You've been avoiding me," he says once we're out of earshot of the party. "Yes." He laughs, seemingly delighted by my bluntness. "Most women play coy games. You're refreshingly direct." "I'm not playing games at all," I reply. "I'm genuinely not interested in you, and I wish you'd respect that." Julian stops before a large abstract painting, studying it rather than looking at me. "Do you know what first attracted me to you, Sophia?" I don't answer. In my previous life, he claimed it was my smile, my innocence, my kind heart. All lies. "Your file," he continues, watching my reaction closely. "Your father keeps extensive documentation on you. Psychological evaluations, medical records, security incidents, most fascinating reading." My blood runs cold. This is new. In my previous life, Julian never revealed his access to my personal information until after we were married. "Security incidents?" I repeat, testing him. His smile is predatory now. The kidnapping attempt when you were 12, the threatening letters, the suspicious car that followed you home from school last year. He steps closer. It must have been terrifying, living with that constant threat. No wonder you responded so strongly to protection and security when it was offered. Realization hits me like a physical blow. The kidnapping attempt, the threatening letters, the suspicious car, all orchestrated by Julian to make me feel unsafe, to make me crave protection, to drive me right into his arms. I take an instinctive step backward. "You were behind those incidents." It's not a question, but Julian tilts his head, studying me curiously. What an extraordinary accusation. Why would I orchestrate threats against a girl I hadn't even met? "To make me vulnerable," I whisper. "To make me grateful when you swooped in to save me." For a fraction of a second, Julian's mask slips. Surprise flickers across his face, then something darker, more calculating. "How could you possibly know my methods?" he asks softly, all pretense gone. "Unless you've seen them before." My heart nearly stops. There's something in his eyes, a recognition that should be impossible. Does he remember too? Is that even possible? Before I can respond, he steps closer, backing me against the wall. "Who are you really, Sophia?" Because the frightened, insecure girl I researched wouldn't have the confidence to reject me, wouldn't recognize manipulation tactics so quickly, wouldn't look at me with such knowing hatred. My mouth goes dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." His hand reaches up, not quite touching my face. "I think somehow, somewhere, we've done this dance before, and you know how it ends." A voice calls from the corridor. "Sophia, your 10 minutes are up." My mother. Thank God. Julian steps back immediately, his charming mask sliding back into place. "We'll continue this fascinating conversation another time," he murmurs. "I have a feeling we have much more to discuss than art." As I hurry back to my mother, my mind races with terrifying possibilities. Somehow, Julian senses the truth. He doesn't remember exactly, not like I do, but he feels the echo of our previous connection. And that makes him far more dangerous than I ever imagined. I barely sleep after the gala, Julian's words echoing in my mind. "I think somehow, somewhere, we've done this dance before, and you know how it ends." The thought that he might have some awareness of our previous timeline terrifies me more than anything else. Morning brings new complications. My father storms into the breakfast room, face flushed with anger. "What did you say to Julian Chen last night?" he demands, slamming his palm on the table. "He called me at 6 this morning to discuss an urgent matter regarding our partnership." My mother straightens in her chair. "Alexander, lower your voice." He ignores her, eyes fixed on me. The overseas expansion is in jeopardy unless we can demonstrate our commitment to the partnership. Julian has proposed a solution. I already know what's coming. In my previous life, this solution was an internship at Chen Investments, placing me directly under Julian's supervision. The beginning of my complete isolation from friends and family. I'm not interested in any solution that involves me, I say firmly. You have no choice, my father snaps. The board meeting is this afternoon. Julian will present the restructuring plan that requires your participation. My mother sets down her teacup with unusual force. What exactly is he proposing that involves our 18-year-old daughter, Alexander? My father shifts uncomfortably. Julian believes Sophia should join the company immediately, rather than pursuing university. He's offering to personally mentor her in preparation for eventually joining the board. Absolutely not, my mother and I say simultaneously. The decision isn't yours to make, my father says coldly. The Sophia Group's survival depends on this partnership. You will attend the board meeting this afternoon and accept Julian's mentorship offer graciously. After he leaves, my mother reaches for my hand. We won't let this happen. We might not have a choice, I admit. Julian has been planning this for longer than we realized. I tell her what Julian revealed about orchestrating the security threats throughout my childhood. With each detail, her face grows paler. We need evidence, she says finally. Accusations won't be enough against someone of his standing. I may have a way, I reply slowly, remembering the hidden recording system in Julian's home office. In my previous life, I discovered it only after we were married, when it was too late. But I need to get back into his house. The Sophia Group headquarters occupies the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper. I've rarely visited, having shown little interest in the family business in either timeline. Today, dozens of curious eyes follow me as my father leads me to the boardroom. Julian already sits at my father's right hand, as though the position has always belonged to him. His smile when he sees me makes my skin crawl. Miss Sophia, he greets me. I'm pleased you could join us for this important discussion about your future. Mr. Chen, I respond coldly. I understood this meeting was about the company's future, not mine. Several board members exchange glances. My directness is unexpected in this environment of carefully calculated corporate politics. My father clears his throat. Let's begin. For the next hour, Julian presents his restructuring plan for the Sophia Group's international expansion. His knowledge of our company's inner workings is disturbing. He speaks of confidential projects, internal challenges, and strategic weaknesses that only someone with access to secured files would know. Finally, he reaches the section labeled Leadership Transition. Alexander has expressed concern about succession planning, Julian explains smoothly. His daughter represents the future of the Sophia name, but lacks the necessary business experience. Several board members nod in agreement, stealing glances at me. I propose a mentorship program, with Sophia working directly under my supervision at Chen Investments while simultaneously holding a nominal vice president position here. Julian's eyes fix on mine. This would strengthen our partnership while preparing her for eventual leadership. And if I refuse? I ask quietly. The room falls silent. No one challenges Julian Chen. He smiles. This isn't a proposal that allows for refusal, Miss Sophia. Your father has already agreed to the terms. You mean he's already signed over control of the company? I counter, watching the board members' reactions carefully. This isn't a partnership. It's an acquisition disguised as mentorship, with me thrown in as part of the deal. Murmurs ripple through the room. Julian's expression hardens for just a moment before he regains his composure. Your passion for protecting your family legacy is admirable, he says, voice dangerously soft, which is precisely why this arrangement is in everyone's best interest. He slides a document across the table toward me. Your father has already signed as your legal guardian. Your signature is merely a formality at this point. I scan the document, heart sinking. It's a binding employment contract that would place me directly under Julian's authority, with a non-compete clause that would prevent me from attending university while employed. In my previous life, I signed this eagerly, thrilled by Julian's interest in me. This time I see it for what it truly is, a carefully constructed cage. I need time to review this, I say, meeting Julian's gaze directly. Of course, he replies, magnanimously. You have until tomorrow morning. I've arranged for a private dinner tonight to discuss any questions or concerns. As the meeting concludes, Julian catches my arm, his grip firm, but not enough to cause a scene. 6 o'clock at my residence, he murmurs. Come alone. Your mother's protective instincts, while charming, are becoming an inconvenience. The threat in his words is unmistakable. Julian has unlimited access to my home and family through my father. My mother's safety depends on my compliance. But a private dinner at his residence also gives me exactly what I need, access to his home office and the evidence that might free me from his grasp. As I leave the boardroom, I text Lena. Need emergency backup tonight. We'll explain later. This time, I won't face the predator alone. Lena is waiting 2 blocks from my house in her mother's car, a rusting sedan that couldn't look more different from the sleek vehicles of the Sophia estate. This is officially the craziest thing we've ever done, she says as I slide into the passenger seat. Are you sure about this? I check the small recording device in my purse, a backup to my phone. I need evidence that Julian Chen isn't the philanthropic businessman everyone thinks he is. And you think he'll just confess his evil plans over dinner? Lena sounds skeptical as she navigates toward Julian's neighborhood. No one is that careful all the time, I reply, especially when they think they're winning. We park at a cafe near Julian's estate, reviewing the plan one final time. Lena will wait in the car. If I don't text her every 30 minutes, she'll call the police. If I send our emergency code, she'll do the same immediately. I still think this is insane, she mutters. Just don't sign his creepy contract. Go to Seoul, problem solved. It's not that simple. I wish I could tell her everything about my previous life, about Julian's ultimate plan that ended with a knife in my stomach on my wedding day. Trust me, this is necessary. Julian's security guard looks surprised when I arrive at the gate alone. Miss Sophia, Mr. Chen is expecting you. The mansion is exactly as I remember it, from the marble floors to the priceless art adorning every wall. In my previous life, I'd been dazzled by this display of wealth and power. Now I see it for what it is, a carefully constructed facade hiding something monstrous. Julian waits in the dining room, champagne already poured. Right on time, he notes with approval. You always were punctual. The phrasing sends a chill down my spine. Always were implies a history we don't officially have in this timeline. Let's skip the pleasantries, I say, remaining standing. I know what this dinner is really about. Julian smiles, studying me with unsettling intensity. Do you? I find that increasingly difficult to believe. He gestures to the chair beside him. Please sit. The chef has prepared something special. I take the seat opposite him instead. I'm not signing your contract. I expected resistance. Julian sips his champagne. Your father warned me about your stubborn streak, though I must admit it's more pronounced than I anticipated. My father doesn't know me at all, I counter, just like he doesn't know what you're really after. Julian tilts his head. And what am I really after, Sophia? I activate the recording app on my phone beneath the table. Control of the Sophia group, of my father's connections, of me. He laughs softly. Ambitious, isn't it? Yet you say it with such certainty, almost as if you've seen it happen before. My heart skips. He's fishing, trying to confirm his suspicions about my knowledge. I've researched you thoroughly, I say instead, including the other companies you've acquired through similar tactics, including the suspicious accidents that befell those who stood in your way. Julian's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes sharpens. You've been busy for a high school student? I know about the kidnapping attempts you orchestrated when I was younger. I know you've been monitoring me for years. I know about the bribes to my father's security team to feed you information about our family. This is a calculated risk. Some of this I know from my previous life. Some is educated guesswork based on patterns I now recognize. Julian sets down his glass, all pretense of charm vanishing. Remarkable. Either you're extremely intuitive or something far more interesting is happening here. He leans forward. Tell me, Sophia, do you ever have dreams about us? About a future that hasn't happened yet? I maintain a neutral expression despite my racing heart. I don't dream about predators. Yet you know things you couldn't possibly know. His voice drops lower. Things about me, about us, that haven't transpired in this reality. This reality. The phrasing confirms my worst fear. Somehow, Julian has at least partial awareness of our previous timeline. I don't know what you're talking about, I say firmly. I think you do. Julian's smile returns, colder now. When I first saw you at the charity gala, I felt it. Recognition, connection, destiny. You felt it too, but unlike last time, you ran from it. Last time. My blood freezes in my veins. You stepped aside when I tried to spill my drink on you, he continues, a move you couldn't have anticipated unless you'd seen it before. You've been one step ahead of me at every turn, Sophia. It's as if you're reading from a script of our future. I force myself to hold his gaze. You sound delusional. Perhaps. He reaches for a folder beside him. Or perhaps I'm simply more aware than most. Did you know that déjà vu isn't just a psychological curiosity? Some believe it's evidence of multiple timelines, of lives we've lived before. He slides photographs across the table. My breath catches. They're surveillance photos of me from the past week, alongside similar photos from my previous life. Side by side, the similarities and differences are striking. I've been fascinated by you for longer than you realize, Julian says softly. Something changed recently. You changed, and I intend to discover exactly how and why. I stand abruptly. This conversation is over. On the contrary, Julian's voice hardens. It's just beginning. You will sign the contract, Sophia. Your father's company depends on it. Your mother's safety depends on it. The threat hangs in the air between us. I activate the recording device in my purse as backup. Are you threatening my family? I ask clearly. Julian smiles. I'm stating facts. Accidents happen to people who make unfortunate business decisions. Your father has made several. Your mother's daily drive to her volunteer work takes her along some treacherous roads. And if I sign, then everyone stays safe and healthy. He slides the contract toward me. It's really quite simple. My hand trembles as I reach for the pen, playing the part he expects. I need to use the restroom first. Julian gestures toward the hallway. You remember where it is, don't you? Or should I say, you'll find it easily enough. As I walk away, my phone vibrates with Lena's check-in text. I respond that I'm fine, adding our prearranged signal that I'll need more time. But instead of the restroom, I slip silently toward Julian's home office. In my previous life, I discovered his hidden files only after we were married, when it was too late. This time, I know exactly what I'm looking for and where to find it. Julian's office is exactly as I remember from my previous life. Dark wood paneling and leather furniture creating an atmosphere of old-world power. I move swiftly to his desk, activating the hidden button beneath the right drawer. The false wall panel slides open silently, revealing his private safe. In my previous life, I discovered the combination by accident years into our marriage. 10/17/26. The day we met, the day we married, the day he planned for me to die. Except in this timeline, we haven't married yet. I hesitate, then try 10/17. The date we met at the charity gala in my previous life. The safe opens with a soft click. Inside are files, dozens of them, meticulously labeled. I find the one marked Sophia and quickly photograph each page with my phone. Surveillance reports dating back to my childhood. Psychological evaluations stolen from my school records. Detailed plans for the accidental security incidents that made me so vulnerable to his protection. Beneath these is another file labeled Contingency. I flip it open and nearly drop it in shock. Detailed plans for eliminating my father and making it look like a heart attack. Similar plans for my mother involving a car accident. A complete strategy for taking control of the Sophia group in the event of their deaths, with me as the puppet heir, controlled by my husband. My husband. The file was created 3 years ago, long before Julian approached me in either timeline. I photograph everything, hands trembling so badly I have to retake several shots. As I replace the files, a small black notebook catches my attention. It has no label, but something compels me to open it. The first page stops my heart. Timeline variations. Subject Sophia. Below are detailed notes comparing different versions of me. Different outcomes, different approaches he's apparently tried. My blood runs cold as I read his clinical observations about which tactics were most effective in making me emotionally dependent on him. Timeline 3. Direct approach after charity gala successful. Subject responded favorably to displays of wealth and status. Relationship progressed to engagement within 6 months. Terminated prematurely due to family interference. Timeline 4. Orchestrated kidnapping attempt followed by rescue. Highly effective. Subject developed trauma bond. Marriage achieved within 1 year. Complications arose with pregnancy. Termination required. Termination required. He's killed me before. Not just once. I photograph every page, fighting nausea. According to his notes, this is the 7th timeline he's experienced. In some, he succeeded in killing me. In others, something interfered. But he keeps trying, refining his approach, learning from each iteration. He remembers, not fully, not like I do, but enough to maintain his obsession across multiple timelines. I hear footsteps in the hallway, Julian coming to find me. I quickly replace the notebook, close the safe, and slide the panel shut. I'm at the office door when his voice stops me. Finding everything you need? I freeze, then turn slowly. Julian stands in the doorway, watching me with a predator's patience. I got lost looking for the bathroom, I lie. We both know that's not true. He steps closer. What were you hoping to find, Sophia? Evidence of my true nature? Proof that I'm not the man everyone believes me to be? I don't know what you mean, I say, backing toward the desk, discreetly slipping my phone into my pocket. Let me make something very clear. His voice is soft, almost gentle, which makes his words all the more terrifying. This isn't the first time we've done this dance. It's not even the second or third. Each time the details change, but the outcome remains the same. You are mine. You have always been mine, across every version of reality. You're insane, I whisper. Perhaps. He smiles coldly. Or perhaps I'm the only one who truly understands what's happening. How many times have you relived this, Sophia? Is this your first reset, or have you been through this before too? I remain silent, unwilling to confirm his suspicions. Your silence is answer enough. Julian moves to block the doorway. Let me guess. In your previous iteration, you married me. Something went wrong. You died, perhaps? And now you've been given another chance, armed with knowledge of what I'm capable of. The accuracy of his guess terrifies me more than anything else. I'm leaving now. No one leaves until I permit it. Julian's mask slips completely, revealing the monster beneath. You'll sign the contract. You'll accept my proposal when it comes. You'll marry me on October 17th, just as you were always meant to. Fighting your destiny only makes things more difficult. I inch toward the other exit, the one hidden behind the bookcase that I discovered in my previous life. And if I refuse, then accidents happen. To your mother, to your friend Lena waiting in the car down the street, to anyone you care about. His smile returns. Or you can accept the inevitable and they live long, healthy lives. My back touches the bookcase. Just 3 steps to the left and I can reach the hidden latch. Why me? I ask, desperate to keep him talking. With your wealth and power, you could have anyone. Julian tilts his head, studying me like a curious specimen. Because you're the variable that keeps changing. In a world where I control everything, you remain unpredictable. Sometimes you love me completely, sometimes you fight, sometimes you escape, temporarily, but always, always, you are the key to something greater. The key to what? I edge closer to the hidden door. Power beyond imagination. His eyes gleam with fanatical intensity. There's a pattern to these resets, these timeline variations. I'm close to understanding it, so close to controlling it. And you, my dear, are the catalyst. My fingers find the latch. You're never going to control me again, I say firmly and press. Nothing happens. The door doesn't open. Julian laughs softly. Looking for this? He holds up a small metal component. I remove the latch mechanism after the 3rd reset. You always try to escape through that door. Always. My heart sinks as I realize I've truly been outmaneuvered. He has been through this multiple times, learning from each iteration, while this is my first reset. What happens now? I ask, fighting to keep my voice steady. Julian slides the contract across his desk toward me. Now you sign, and we begin again, but with new awareness. Together, we'll unlock the secret of these resets. My options are dwindling. If I refuse, he'll hurt my mother, Lena, anyone I care about. If I comply, I'm walking straight back into my killer's arms, but compliance buys time, and I now have evidence of his true nature. I pick up the pen. I sign the contract with a steady hand, though inside I'm shaking. Julian watches with that predatory smile, believing he's won again. But this time is different. This time, I have evidence. Wise choice, he says, taking the contract and sliding it into a folder. Now, shall we return to dinner? We have much to discuss about our future. I check my phone discreetly as we walk back to the dining room. Lena has sent 3 increasingly worried messages. I send a quick, I'm fine with our prearranged code indicating that I've gotten what I needed. Over dinner, Julian outlines his vision for our partnership, as though my signature was merely a formality he always knew he'd obtain. I play along, pretending to be resigned to my fate while learning everything I can about his plans. You'll begin at Chen Investments next week, he explains. We'll announce our engagement after your graduation. The wedding will be October 17th, as it should be. And Seoul University? I ask, keeping my voice neutral. Julian waves dismissively. A unnecessary distraction. You have a greater destiny. I force myself to smile, to nod at appropriate intervals, to appear defeated, all while the evidence that could destroy him sits in my phone and recording device. When dinner ends, Julian walks me to the door, his hand possessively at the small of my back. I'll have my driver take you home. That's not necessary, I reply. I have a friend waiting for me. Julian's eyes narrow. Lena, I presume. You should choose your friends more carefully in your position, Sophia. She's not appropriate company for the future Mrs. Chen. The casual way he dictates who I should associate with makes my skin crawl. In my previous life, I'd accepted his isolation tactics without question, believing they came from love and concern. Good night, Julian, I say, stepping away from his touch. One more thing. He catches my wrist. Your phone, please. My heart stops. What? Your phone, he repeats, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'd like to see it before you leave. If he sees the photos I've taken, everything is lost. My mind races for a plausible excuse. Why would you need my phone? Let's not play games, Sophia. His grip tightens slightly. Either give me your phone willingly or things become unpleasant. I reluctantly hand it over, pulse pounding in my ears. Julian navigates to my photo gallery. My breath catches as he scrolls through recent images. But instead of the incriminating evidence I captured, he sees only selfies with Lena, photos from school, ordinary teenage life. For a moment, I'm confused. Then I remember. My phone automatically backs up photos to the cloud and removes them from local storage to save space, a setting I'd activated just yesterday. Julian returns my phone with a slightly disappointed look. Trust is essential in our relationship, Sophia. I hope you understand that. Of course, I manage to reply, relief making me lightheaded. He kisses my cheek, lips lingering a fraction too long. Until tomorrow, then. Lena's car is waiting exactly where we planned. I collapse into the passenger seat, hands shaking violently now that I'm out of Julian's sight. "Did you get it?" she asks, pulling away from the curb. I nod, unable to speak yet. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Lena says, glancing worriedly at me. "What happened in there?" "He's worse than I thought," I finally manage. "Much worse." We drive to a 24-hour cafe several miles away, well outside Julian's usual territory. Once inside, I download the photos from my cloud storage and show Lena the evidence I've gathered. Her face grows increasingly pale as she scrolls through the images. "This is insane. He's been stalking you since you were a child? Planning to kill your parents? What does he mean by timelines and her sets?" I wish I could tell her everything, but some truths are too unbelievable. I think he's delusional, creating alternate realities in his mind where he controls everything. "We need to take this to the police," Lena says firmly. "Not yet." I take back my phone. "Julian has connections everywhere. If we move too soon, he'll know it was me and he'll retaliate against my mother." "Then what's the plan?" I draw a deep breath. "We need to find others." His notebook mentioned previous victims, other women he's targeted. If we can find them, build a case with multiple witnesses, it will be harder for him to discredit us. And in the meantime, Lena looks skeptical. "You just play along with his sick fantasy?" "Yes," I say grimly. "I let him think he's winning while we build an irrefutable case against him." The strategy feels dangerous, but it's the only path forward I can see. Direct confrontation failed. Running away would leave my mother vulnerable. Fighting Julian's influence within the system proved impossible. My only option is to beat him at his own game, to pretend to soften, to surrender, to give him exactly what he wants, to make him believe, once again, that I am his perfect, compliant victim, all while I work to ensure he never hurts another woman again. Back home, I find my mother waiting anxiously in the sitting room. When she sees me, relief floods her face. "What happened?" she asks, pulling me into a tight hug. I show her everything I discovered in Julian's office. Her hand covers her mouth in horror as she reads his plans for her accident. "We need to leave," she whispers. "Tonight. Take only what we need and disappear." I shake my head. "He'd find us. He has resources we can't imagine." I take her hands in mine. "I have a different plan, but I need you to trust me." As I outline my strategy, her expression shifts from fear to determination. By the time I finish, she's nodding slowly. "It's dangerous," she says, "but you're right. Running would only delay the inevitable." She holds me tightly once more. "When did you become so brave?" I think of my previous life, of the knife plunging into my stomach, of the baby that never had a chance to live, of the second chance I've been given to rewrite not just my ending, but potentially Julian's entire narrative. "I've had practice," I say softly. "Tomorrow I begin my most dangerous performance, convincing a predator that his prey has surrendered while secretly becoming the hunter." Over the next 3 weeks, I become the perfect protege. I arrive punctually at Chen Investments each day after school, diligently learning the business operations Julian places before me. I accept his lunch invitations, his small gifts, his seemingly casual touches. I smile and nod and play the part of a young woman gradually warming to the attention of a powerful man, all while I build my case against him. With Lena's help, I tracked down 3 women mentioned in Julian's notebook, former targets who somehow escaped his complete control. Each meeting requires elaborate precautions to ensure Julian's surveillance doesn't detect them. The first woman, Elena, now lives in another city under a different name. Her hands tremble as she describes how Julian orchestrated a job loss, housing crisis, and family estrangement that left her completely dependent on him. I only escaped because my grandmother died suddenly, leaving me enough money to disappear, she explains. He searched for me for years. The second woman, Michelle, was briefly engaged to Julian 7 years ago. He became increasingly controlling, isolating me from everyone I loved. When I tried to break the engagement, my brother's car was tampered with. The accident nearly killed him. The third, Janie, was Julian's executive assistant 5 years ago. He systematically destroyed every relationship in my life, then positioned himself as my savior. When I finally recognized the pattern and resigned, my apartment was broken into 3 times in 1 month. Each woman agrees to testify, but only if their safety can be guaranteed. Each recognizes the same methodical manipulation, the same escalating control, the same underlying threat of violence when thwarted. Meanwhile, my mother works on her own assignment, building relationships with the wives of key board members, subtly sharing concerns about Julian's business tactics, planting seeds of doubt about his character. My father remains oblivious, increasingly dependent on Julian's business guidance as the company faces manufactured crises that only Julian seems able to solve. Then comes graduation day. As I accept my diploma with top honors, I spot Julian in the audience beside my parents. His presence would have thrilled me in my previous life. Now I recognize it as the territorial display it is. After the ceremony, surrounded by classmates and teachers, Julian approaches with a small velvet box. My stomach clenches, knowing what's inside. "I'm so proud of your accomplishments," he says loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Then, dropping to one knee, he opens the box to reveal the same diamond ring from my previous life. "Sophia, Sophia, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The crowd gasps. My classmates whisper excitedly. My father looks smugly satisfied. My mother maintains a perfect mask of surprise that reveals nothing of our plan. In my previous life, this moment was the happiest I'd ever experienced. Julian's proposal had validated my existence, making me feel truly valued for the first time. Now I see it for what it is, the springing of a trap. "Yes," I say, forcing joy into my voice. "Yes, I will." Julian slides the ring onto my finger, then stands to kiss me. I allow it, fighting the urge to pull away as his lips touch mine. The crowd applauds. Cameras flash. The perfect moment, captured for posterity. 4 months later, I stand in the bridal suite of the same hotel where my previous wedding took place. The same white dress hangs ready, the same flowers adorn the room. Even the weather is identical, autumn sunshine streaming through the windows, but everything else is different. My mother adjusts my veil, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror. "Are you ready?" I nod, touching the small device concealed in my bouquet. Everything's in place. In the groom's suite across the hotel, Julian prepares for our wedding, unaware that police officers in plain clothes have taken positions throughout the venue. Unaware that the wedding guests include not just society's elite, but also the 3 women whose lives he nearly destroyed. Unaware that every gift, every threat, every manipulation has been carefully documented and verified by multiple witnesses. Unaware that today is not the culmination of his carefully orchestrated plan, but of mine. I take a final look in the mirror. The bride who stares back is not the naive, love-struck girl of my previous life. This bride knows exactly what she's walking into and exactly how to walk back out. A knock at the door signals it's time. The wedding planner, the same one from my previous life, peeks in. "Ready, Miss Sophia." Everyone's seated. I'm ready. I confirm, picking up my bouquet. The ceremony begins exactly as before. The same music, the same decorations, the same officiator. Julian waits at the altar, looking picture perfect in his tuxedo, smiling that practice smile as I walk down the aisle on my father's arm. Only my mother, sitting in the front row, knows what's about to happen. Only she sees past my serene bridal expression to the determination beneath. I reach Julian, taking my place beside him as the ceremony begins. He squeezes my hand possessively, whispering, "You look perfect." The officiator speaks the familiar words. The guests smile at the beautiful couple. Everything proceeds according to Julian's meticulous timeline, until the moment the officiator asks, if anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. I press the button on my bouquet, activating the recording device. Julian's voice fills the hall, crystal clear through the venue's sound system. "You'll sign the contract. You'll accept my proposal when it comes. You'll marry me on October 17th, just as you were always meant to. Fighting your destiny only makes things more difficult. And if I refuse," my recorded voice asks, "then accidents happen to your mother, to your friend Lena, to anyone you care about." Gasps ripple through the crowd as the recording continues, revealing Julian's threats, his admission of orchestrating accidents, his plans for my parents. Julian's face transforms from confusion to rage. "What is this?" he hisses, grabbing my arm. "Justice," I reply as uniformed officers step forward from the crowd. What follows is chaos. Julian attempts to flee, only to be blocked by security. My father shouts accusations of betrayal. The 3 women I found stand together, providing additional testimony to the officers. Reporters who were invited to cover the society wedding frantically document the unfolding scandal. And through it all, I remain calm. This is not how my previous wedding ended. This is not me bleeding out in a white dress, betrayed and alone. This is me, finally having the last laugh. 1 year later, I sit in a university cafe in Seoul, reviewing notes for my computer science final. My phone buzzes with a news alert. Business mogul Julian Chen sentenced to 30 years for multiple charges. The article includes a courtroom photo. Julian looks aged beyond his years, the mask of charm completely gone, revealing the monster beneath. Multiple victims came forward after his arrest, each with similar stories of manipulation, control, and violence. My mother calls moments later. "Have you seen the news?" "Yes," I reply. "It's finally over." "How does it feel?" she asks softly. I consider the question, thinking of my previous life, of the pain and betrayal and death that now will never happen, of the future that was stolen from me and has now been reclaimed. "It feels like justice," I say, "and like freedom." After we hang up, I return to my studies, to my new friends, to the life I've built far from Julian's influence. I think sometimes about his talk of multiple timelines, of resets and variations. Whether it was delusion or something more supernatural, I'll never know. What I do know is that this timeline is mine, my choices, my future, my life. And no one will ever take that from me again.